9.4 reteaching. We're just going to kind of go over a little bit of a review for this. All right. So, again, 9.4 is where we have to square root to get the answer. So let's go through these. If we square rooted both sides of this, we'd get x equals plus or minus what? 3. So that's this one down here. Okay? For the next one, I would add 6 to both sides, right? And I would get 7x squared equals 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. Then I would divide both sides by 7. And I would get x squared equals 3. And then I would square root both sides, and I would get x equals plus or minus square root 3. Well, that's not here, but I have this blank one. So this is where I would put plus or minus the square root of 3. I would go right here. Okay. The next one, I'm going to subtract 19 from both sides. I get 4x squared equals negative 12. So even though if I divided it by 4, I'd still get x squared equals negative 3, right? So that's not a solution. So it should be no real solution, but whatever. Okay, and our last one, we're going to subtract 4 from both sides. 3x squared equals 0. Divide by 3, we still get x squared equals 0, and the square root of 0 is still 0. What? All right, number 2 says there's an error. Okay, so let's check the work and see what we would write at the bottom. It says there's an error, but remember, we don't have an answer at the bottom yet, so let's look. So we get negative 5x squared plus 11 equals negative 14. So it looks like they subtracted 11 from both sides and got negative 5x squared equals negative 25. Then it looks like they must have divided by negative 5, right?
No, they didn't divide by negative 5.
Yeah, 25 divided by negative 25 divided by negative 5 is 5. So far, so good. And then square root it, and what is our answer going to be?
Square root 5.
That's the right answer?
Plus or minus?
Plus or minus.
Oh.
Plus or minus. Don't forget the plus or minus. Okay. We're going to solve this problem right here. 9x squared minus 4 equals 23. So you guys try it on your own for just a minute. Okay, guys. So what did you do first?
Added 4.
Added 4 to both sides, and you got 9x squared equals.
27.
And then what did you do?
Divided by 9.
Divided by 9. And you got x squared equals 3. And then what did you do?
Square root.
And so x equals
Plus or minus.
plus or minus square root of 3. Okay, so what does the square root of 3 give us? If we have square root of 3, what's a number that is smaller than square? What's the square root that's smaller than 3? Square root of 2 would be smaller, but that doesn't give me a good square either, so I'm not going to really look at that. What's smaller than the square root of 2 then? Square root of 1, and square root of 1 is going to give me 1, right? What is bigger than the square root of 3?
Square root of 4.
Square root of 4, and is square root of 4 a perfect square?
Yeah.
What is it? 2. So I know that the approximate solution of the quadratic equation 9x squared minus 4 equals 23 would be between plus or minus 1 and plus or minus 2, since plus or minus the square root of 3 is between plus or minus the square root of 1 and plus or minus the square root of 4. So basically, I know my answer is between 1 and 2, right? So it's just kind of a long-winded way of figuring that out. No, I have not been outside. The wind is supposed to be pretty bad, but it's supposed to be really warm. It's supposed to be very warm.
It says it feels like 72 out there with the 24.
It's a little windy.
When I went out, it was nice out there.
Jane, do you have a question?
What's the last one? Where it says and? 4 or 9?
4. 4. All right, let's turn it over. Let's look at the back. We're going to kind of take these steps that they're given right here and figure out what we do first. Thank you. Theodore is trying to solve 5x squared. Shh. Focus. 5x squared plus 2 equals 17. He wrote the steps and explanation on note cards, but they got mixed up. Help Theodore write the steps in the correct order. So if we have 5x squared plus 2 equals 17, what would we do first? Minus 2. So these are my first ones, right? What happens next? After we subtract the 2, we should do what?
Divided by 5.
Divide by 5. So these are steps 2. Once we divided by 5, what should we do? How would we do that? Square root it, right? So 3 and 3. And so my last step would be solve for x and get x's plus or minus square root 3. Okay, so let's write that down. Write our steps down and explanations. So step 1, I'm going to say 5x squared plus 2 minus 2 equals 17 minus 2. And that would be subtract 2 from each side of the equation. Sure. And then I'm going to put step 2 down. 5x squared over 5 equals 15 over 5. And that's divide both sides by 5. Yes? Step 3, I have square root of x squared equals square root of 3. And I have isolate the variable by taking the square root of each equation. Of each side of the equation. And finally, I have x equals plus or minus the square root 3, and it's solve for x. Okay, let's get out our classwork.
Wait, why would you, for step number 1,
Yeah.
why would you minus 2 instead of plus 2?
Because if the equation looked like this, 5x squared plus 2 equals 17. So to get rid of that positive 2, I have to subtract it, right? Because I want it to give me a 0. No. This is the original equation. Do you see it right here? That's the original. This is the original equation. This is my first step. I gotta subtract it. Okay. Let's look at this. We've got a bunch of different problems to try. So I'm not even gonna do the ones at the top. I'm gonna have you do them. I'm gonna start and do maybe like 19 and 20, just to kind of give us an idea. All of them? Okay. So I'm looking at 19. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract 8 from both sides. Okay. Then I'm going to have 9 times 2m minus 3 squared equals 449 minus 8 gives me 441. Okay. Then I'm going to divide both sides by 9. Do you guys see this? Dividing both sides by 9 next. So I get 2m minus 3 squared equals 49. And now I'm going to take the square root. So I get 2m minus 3 equals 7. And then I'm going to add 3 to both sides. So 2m equals 10. And then I'm going to divide both sides by 2. And m equals 5. What did I forget to do? Minus 7 right here. So this should be 2m minus 3 equals negative 7. So here's my split right when I take the square root. Now I add 3 to both sides. Do you guys see that? That when I square root something, I have to have a positive 7 and a negative 7.
Would it be a plus and minus sign?
No,
Then why does it still equal 10?
it doesn't. Negative 7 plus 3 gives me negative 4.
What about the positive
It does equal 10 over there. You have two different answers, right? So this gives me negative 4. Divide by 2. M equals negative 2. Okay, you want me to do number 20 as well? Okay. All right. It's my first step.
Plus 5.
Add 5 to both sides. And I get 4 times 6x minus 1 squared equals 223 plus 5 gives me 228. Now I'm going to divide it by 4. And 6x minus 1 squared equals 57. Okay, am I going to square root now? Remember, you're going to get a positive and a negative answer now. So I'm square rooting both sides, and I'm going to get 6x minus 1 equals positive square root 57. And I'm going to get 6x minus 1 equals negative square root 57. Nope, I'm going to add 1. So I get 6x equals square root 57 plus 1. Divide the whole thing by 6. So x equals, I'm going to move my 1 to the front so I know that 1's not underneath the square root sign. Square root 57 over 6. Same over here, I'm going to add the 1 to both sides. And I get 6x equals 1 minus square root 57. Divide the whole thing by 6. So those are my two answers. How are we doing? Just remember, when you square root, all of a sudden you have two answers, a negative and a positive. Okay? So I did, so you only have 18 more to go. I recommend you do it in class right now, but I'll check both of them in tomorrow. This and the 9.4 additional practice. Yeah. Okay. Both of them are due tomorrow.